Hello, and welcome to SoE TV, that's School of Education TV. I'm your host, Dawn Krim, the Associate Dean for External Relations here in the School of Ed. Today, I am pleased to have with me as my guest, Assistant Professor Raul Leon. Raul is our Outstanding Recent Alumni Award winner, and we are so pleased to have you back on campus. So welcome.
As well, thank you. A pleasure to be here back at UW-Madison.
So Raul, you actually have two graduate degrees from UW-Madison, International Public Affairs and a higher ed Ph.D. in Ed Leadership Policy and Analysis. So how many years were you here and what was that experience like?
I believe I came here in 2005, so I was here from 2005 to 2010. I spent 2 years completing a Master's in International Public Affairs at the La Follette School, and 3 years completing my PhD in Education, Leadership, and Policy Analysis at the School of Education.
Okay. So when you initially came for the International Public Affairs degree, what were you thinking about career-wise?
I think definitely when I remember the career pattern and aspirations, I wanted to pursue a career in public service, specifically with the Department of State. And my story is a little unique. I think when I came to La Follette, I wanted to be a diplomat. I wanted to engage in policy. I think it's all those dreams that you have, thinking about traveling the world and really affecting policy matters at the international level. But the more I got embedded and socializing my training, I had opportunities that sort of like exposed me to other areas, specifically within the grounds of the university, within the grounds of education or student affairs. So as I developed through my training, I realized that education or working for a university could be a path for someone doing policy analysis. So that is sort of how the transition occurred between the master's and the ELPA. And I think taking a class in the department and taking a class as one of my electives in educational policy sort of like opened my eyes, and I had tapped in the shoulder by a professor that taught at the ELPA department saying, you could be a good candidate for our doctoral program. Have you considered that? And I think those are the things that you start to consider when someone else tells you maybe you would like to do that.
Well, for you to win the Outstanding Recent Alumni Award so quickly in your career really cements that that faculty member really saw the leadership qualities in you. There's also other faculty members in ELPA in the School of Ed that have a connection to La Follette School. John Whitty is one who actually has both. So currently, you are a tenure-track assistant professor at Eastern Michigan University. So in that role, what have you taken from that experience in the international arena as well as the higher ed leadership into that position?
I think mainly both my experiences at La Follette and at ELPA really shaped who I am today as a teaching and as a scholar and as a practitioner. I think in the teaching side, I think I not only have developed courses with an international focus, but I have also developed opportunities for students to study abroad. I'm very happy, for instance, to say that today I developed a program which is one of least than 10 in the nation for study abroad for higher ed practitioners. There's very few, and Eastern has one, and I'm glad to do that in Ecuador. Two, as a practitioner, I have and continue to work with study abroad to be able to create opportunities and understand, for instance, how males of color work and what do they gain about when they go and study abroad. So that is an area that sort of mixes up in the practitioner and the scholar. And then when I think about teaching, I think ELPA and La Follette taught me how to be very, very strategic about understanding policy, understanding what it takes to manage a theoretical framework, and it taught me also too how to bring my expertise outside the classroom into the classroom and how to see that bridge between the practitioner and the scholar and live it in the classroom and sort of that energy and that knowledge and seeing that through your students and remembering that I was a student not so long ago. So I had good mentors and I had professors that really, really stand out and I really respect because they were so good. So just aspiring us to be like them one day.
Wow, that was like the Wisconsin idea in action. I feel like we just had a commercial. That is wonderful. Well, what it says to me is Wisconsin ID is alive and well on this campus, not just in the School of Education, but also across campus, so that you feel like you were mentored and armed with the information to not just work in your discipline, but spread it out among your community and internationally. So you mentioned there's some faculty members that you've had that really have inspired you. Can you share who a few of them might be?
Sure. I think, for instance, when I go back to my master's, Dr. Melanie Mannion, I think she was not only a tough professor, but I saw her as someone with a huge degree of expertise that I sort of wanted to pursue and accumulate, because I saw how people looked at her, how she was able to share her knowledge, and how she was able to be recognized as someone that knew a field very specific. So when I did my PhD, I knew I had to become an expert in something and had that ability to know, translate it, and be able to teach it. So that was something that she taught me. In ELPA, for instance, I had really great experiences. I think my career really was shaped by Dr. Orlando Jackson, not only because of modeling what he did, but rather to the opportunities and the doors that he opened for me to develop as a grad student. Then as teachers, I can go down the line with Rich Halverson, Elton Krim, Erica Halverson as well, Carolyn Kelly. What I learned from those professors is that faculty life could be a life that I could pursue. And two, I learned their passion and knowledge in student affairs and higher ed. And I sort of wanted to, I started visualizing myself as a scholar. I started visualizing myself as what they did. And I think I gained different things from each professor. But the quality of the faculty sort of gave me the ability to understand that I was privileged and positioned to do very well, because I was at a place in which I was learning from people that have done very well in their careers, and not only because of self-serving, but also serving in the community and the state at the policy level. So I understood that I was meant to do something better than just getting a doctorate. I was meant to give back once I did it.
Wow. So in sharing that, when you think of students that are thinking about getting their PhD, what advice would you have for them?
I think one advice as a first-generation college student is that you need to seek out. And I think I often ask myself, what would have happened if I knew more about the college experience? What would have happened if I knew about how to apply for GA-ships in my master's program? What would I knew about how to pursue a doctoral degree? I knew very little. My parents were not involved in the process. I really have very few people mentoring me as far as how to go about it. But then once I got to college, I was part of programs that mentor other students in that process. So I sort of took advantage of that to understand my process as well. So what I will do is to tell them that exploring those possibilities and reaching out is not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of you don't know it. Like, we all need it, and we will continually do that at different paths of our career. So my biggest advice is explore your opportunities and sort of like seek out, and don't be discouraged by how much information you don't know. It's a normal feeling, and the more that you know, you actually will feel that you know less. But as you move through your career and find that person or someone that has done it, like find someone that has done it or is one step ahead of you, so you can see what they are doing without getting lost.
Wow, that is excellent advice. So when I think about your current work now at Eastern Michigan University and the establishment of the International Study Abroad program, what has that experience meant to the students you've taken abroad?
I am very proud, and I think like I'm a very emotional person. So for instance, when you read student evaluations, or when actually students graduate from the program and they do their exit portfolio, the level of connection that I have developed with the students that went abroad is a level of connection that I don't think I will develop with any other students in the program. For instance, in undergrad, I was actually lucky to go study abroad myself. So I knew at that point, one day, I was going to offer the same type of opportunity, because the connection that I was developing with friends, other people studying abroad, and faculty was much more different and deeper at any other level when it came to motivating me to educate myself. So that sort of showed me the path, and now that I see that I am able to provide that to students, is just a great feeling because you see their minds opening, you see their minds exploring other topics, you see them sort of like understanding that the world extends beyond just the bubble of Michigan or the Midwest or the world. And two, you show them something about yourself. And I think I'm a person that I always like mentors because it's not about what they teach you, it's about you connecting with them about who they are and learning that they are a normal person as well. So for me, showing them the who I am outside of the classroom and showing them my home, my city, my food, my family, is just really meant that they understand the importance of knowing people when you serve. And in my field, serving the students, working in student affairs, we want to serve students as individuals. We want to understand them as one person. So a study abroad allows me sort of practice what I preach, which is getting to know the individual.
Wow, I'm sure people are lined up to take your class because I want to take a class with you. Earlier, too, you mentioned that some of your work outside of the international realm also focus on men of color. Can you talk a little bit about what that work is and what you hope to achieve by focusing particularly on men of color?
I think when I came to the doctoral program, that was the first time in which I started to explore issues about diversity and, for instance, men of color. And it might seem particularly interesting to you that I consider myself a Latino male, but growing in South America, I really didn't explore my identity because I didn't have to. Like, I didn't have other populations. Like, we were the majority, so I never really thought about what does it mean to be a Latino male. I was like, well, everybody else is one, so it didn't really took much thinking. But when I came to the U.S., I started to understand the race, ethnicity, and gender, and other identity populations dynamics that take place. So as I pursue my doctoral program, I got interested in that topic, and I think often is who you meet that will influence your career. So I met scholars, and my advisor was doing work in that area. So it sort of felt natural that I will explore some of his interests as well as I was learning. So he was the first person that introduced me to a topic, and what we decided to explore, we started to explore the identity of males of color across the globe and see this whole idea of like, is there a boys crisis? Is there a male crisis? Is there something happening to our boys today across the world that we can learn from different countries? So that was the first piece. I think we found a lot of similarities, and we're surprisingly, when I conducted sort of our first lit review in which we began to understand that what happened to males of color here in the US is not that different from what happens to males of color in England, what happens to males of color in South Africa, what happens to males of color in other continents. And so we were able to sort of position ourselves, and if this is something that happens as a trend and we see some things in the literature, what can we do about it? And my projects and literature now have sort of stem from that.
So what can we do about it?
So one thing that we understood is like the idea that students didn't really get exposed to faculty or mentors of people in their fields. And we also understood that very few times the students felt special in places where people could relate to them, not only because of what they do, but of who they are. So what we did, and I'm excited to sort of share, is that in 2010, we created or provided ideas for the first international colloquium on black males, and that was with the leadership of Dr. Jackson, Dr. James Moore from Ohio State University, and myself, and that actually came out of the first paper that we wrote. So as we were writing that paper, we said, well, it seems that we could really impact males of color by our work, so why don't we take it to an international scale in which we have these meetings in different places on the world to understand their situation. And I can truly say it, when we went to places, I cannot even count the number of students that will come to us, thank us as just for the opportunity to be able to discuss these issues with other males of color. Like, I cannot count the number of times students came to us and said, this is the first time I had more than one person that looks like me in this room. And I thank you for that opportunity. And for us, like, to us sometimes seems natural because we're in the academy and we might see other people that look like us, and even then we know there's not that many males of color in education or Latino males or black males, but we do understand that once you come to an institution, you know each other. So you sort of know who people are, but our students very seldomly engage with faculty or know who they are. So unless we're explicit and intentional about doing that work, they will not find a way to sort of come out and hang out. Like you don't
Okay.
hang out with your students just because they're of your same ethnicity. So
Right.
we created a structured opportunity for us to be able to get to know each other.
Okay. So when we embarked on this discussion about men of color, you talked about being Latino and growing up, I believe, in Ecuador.
Correct.
So is the focus on men of color, it's their experience in a society or an environment where they're the minority, or is it just their experience living as a male of color? Want to make sure I understand that distinction.
I think it's both, and I think as to how my experience so shapes my work is
Okay.
that I understand what it takes to, for instance, to navigate in an environment in which you are a majority.
Okay.
I understand what is to have a strong identity as a person and as a male, and now
Okay.
I understand too what is it like to be a minority in a place where it's predominantly white. So by
okay.
navigating all those three spaces, I think my work has been shaped by having a deeper understanding that I understand the complexities of
Got
what
it.
it might be like to feel a certain person at a certain place in a certain context.
Okay.
And all of that revolves about one common topic, which for me, in my agenda of research and work is student success. Everything that I do is
okay.
relevant to like everything that you position yourself to help students.
Yep.
How is that related to educational success?
Okay.
And that is why I pursue a PhD in higher ed, because I thought that is where I had the bigger opportunity to have an impact.
Okay.
Educating people, giving them the tools to be able to do something with their lives.
Okay. So thinking about student success, because you're at the academy, are you able to help boys of color, people of color, or just students be successful in the K-12 realm?
One thing that we have done, so for instance, my focus is in higher education.
Okay.
And I think when you work at a university, often you have that controversy in your mind, which is it too late to help people once they get here? Like
Yeah.
if they don't get here. So what we're doing is like at Eastern Michigan University, we created the Brotherhood Initiative, which is helping others obtain degrees, and it's for males of color at an institution. And it's focused on retention and success and pretty much getting students to graduate. But we have begun sort of to understand that we need to start early with a pipeline. And what we're doing is because of that knowledge, we are moving or strategically sort of positioning ideas across the leadership to understand that our program and our work needs to begin much earlier.
Okay.
And in one hand, it's disheartening because you see what's happening to education being defunded
Yeah.
in some states, and I'm sad to see, for instance, some of that thing happening here. And Michigan is not much different, like the
Okay.
educational system in Michigan. But I am a huge advocate of the power that those type of initiatives could have
Okay.
because of my experience here at UW. I
Okay.
was lucky to work for the People program, a pre-college program
Yep.
that begins all the way in the 6th grade.
Yep.
So I witnessed the change and the impact that the program can have when you dedicate time to students to sort of tell them, we have the promise of education here, but we're going to actually walk you through that whole thing. And when you see him come to campus, graduate, socialize, and do great things, like you realize that every single thing was worth it because you devoted, you put resources to it. Like you really actually end up doing what you said your values are.
Wow. Well, you know, I really appreciate having the opportunity to sit down and talk with you about, you know, what you've learned here, how you've been able to take your identity and the success that you've had here at UW-Madison into your higher education career at Eastern Michigan. And, you know, as a parent of 2 children, one being an African-American boy, it's, you know, eye-opening and refreshing to hear you talk about the identity work that's needed for them to be successful, and as well as the importance of pre-college programs like People here. So thanks for acknowledging sort of all of the education that happened in the classroom and outside of the classroom while you were here as a student. And thank you for taking that information and that work with you into the future at Eastern Michigan.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate the invitation. And as you mentioned before, like the whole idea of the Wisconsin idea of doing things beyond the borders of the state, doing things beyond what our bubble is, I'm a huge advocate of that. And I learned that here at UW-Madison. Like that was instilled in who we were from the beginning, like going to a policy school here and then going to the Ph.D. The whole idea of us being better to serve better, it was something that I think every Wisconsin graduate has, lives, and tries to sort of continue to live as they go in the real world. So thank you for the
Well
opportunity.
said. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have. So Raul, again, congratulations to you on winning the recent Outstanding Graduate Award, and thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you, Dawn. It was a pleasure.
And I'd like to thank you, our viewers, and our video producers for being with us today as well. We appreciate your time. Have a great day.